It feels a little strange to sit down and write all of this, but I think I need to get it off my chest. Maybe someone out there will understand, maybe not. Either way, I've been carrying this secret around for too long, and I need to talk about it. So here it goes. It all started a few years ago. My husband Ben and I were living a fairly normal life. Well, as normal as it gets. We had been married for about 5 years when we decided to adopt a child. Ben and I had always wanted a family, and after a couple of years of trying to have our own biological kids and facing fertility issues, we decided to go down the adoption route. It felt like the right thing to do, and Ben was so excited about the idea. I remember the first time we went to the adoption agency. Ben was so hopeful, so full of optimism. He was talking about how he couldn't wait to be a father, how he wanted to give a child a home. It made my heart swell, honestly. He had always been such a caring and patient person, and I knew he'd be a great dad. We went through the whole process, the interviews, the paperwork, the home visits. It was a lot, but we got through it. Then, one day, we got the call. There was a little boy, around 4 years old, who had been in foster care for most of his life. He was quiet, withdrawn, and had been through a lot already. They thought we might be a good match for him. I'll never forget the first time we met him. His name was Noah. He had big, sad eyes and looked so tiny for his age. When he came into our home, he didn't say much. Ben tried to get him to open up, but Noah just clung to his stuffed animal and watched us from a distance. It broke my heart. I saw how Ben's heart ached for him. He wanted so badly to make Noah feel safe, loved, and wanted. But something happened along the way, something that I wasn't prepared for. Over time, I started to feel like there was this distance between Ben and me. I don't know when it started, but I began to notice that he was spending more and more time with Noah, trying to bond with him, trying to be the father he'd always dreamed of being. He was so patient, so focused on Noah's needs, that I began to feel invisible. It wasn't his fault. I could see he was doing it all for Noah, but still, I felt like I was being pushed to the sidelines. And then, one day, I met him, Luke. He was a friend of a friend, someone I hadn't known very long but had always gotten along with. At first, it was just casual. We talked, we laughed, we shared stories about life. But the more we hung out, the more I felt this connection with him. He wasn't like Ben, not at all. He was confident, charming, a little mysterious. He made me feel seen, in a way that Ben hadn't in a long time. I didn't mean for it to happen. Honestly, I didn't. I wasn't looking for anything, but there was this spark with Luke that I hadn't felt in so long. We started texting more, meeting up for coffee, talking about everything and nothing. At first, I thought it was harmless, just some innocent fun. But then it became more than that. The conversations turned into longer texts. And the texts turned into calls. And before I knew it, I was looking forward to our conversations more than I should have. It wasn't long before things went too far. The first time we kissed, it was like something in me woke up that I had forgotten was even there. I didn't stop it. I didn't push him away. And it was thrilling in a way I didn't expect. For the first time in a long while, I felt wanted. Alive, and that feeling, it consumed me. Luke made me feel special, and it had been so long since I felt that way with Ben. Looking back, I feel ashamed. So ashamed. But at that moment, I wasn't thinking about Ben. I wasn't thinking about anything but myself, about the loneliness I had started to feel, and the connection I found with someone else. I convinced myself that it wasn't a big deal, that it was just a mistake. But it wasn't just a mistake. It was an escape. I kept it a secret, of course. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't even tell Luke how conflicted I felt. I wanted to believe that it didn't mean anything, but deep down, I knew it did. It had already started to change things between Ben and me. I couldn't go back to pretending everything was okay. I tried to bury it for a while, to act like everything was fine. But I couldn't ignore the guilt that weighed on me every time I saw Ben. He was so good to me, so good to Noah, and here I was, betraying him. I don't think Ben ever suspected anything. He was so focused on being a dad to Noah, so absorbed in trying to give him everything he never had, that I think he just assumed everything was fine at home. But it wasn't. I was lying to him every single day. And then one day, Ben did something that made me stop in my tracks. He turned to me and said, "You're a good person." You're a good woman, and you deserve to be happy. It hit me like a ton of bricks. He wasn't just saying it to be kind. He meant it. And in that moment, I realized that I didn't deserve him. I didn't deserve his kindness, his patience, his love. I had thrown all of that away, and for what? Some fleeting moment of feeling wanted. The guilt started to gnaw at me. I couldn't look at him the same way anymore. I couldn't pretend I was the woman he thought I was, but I kept going. I kept the secret. I kept up the facade. And maybe that was the worst part of it all. How easily I deceived him. I never told anyone. I didn't know how to, so I buried it deep down. But it was always there. Always. It's hard to explain. But as time passed, I began to feel like I was living two different lives. On the one hand, I had Ben, my husband, the man I had built a life with. He was kind, loving, everything I could have asked for in a partner. He was the kind of man who would do anything for me, for Noah. And on the other hand, there was Luke, the man who made me feel something I hadn't felt in years. He made me feel seen, important, desired. As much as I tried to keep my worlds separate, they started bleeding into each other in ways I couldn't control. I'd have breakfast with Ben and Noah, laughing about little things, feeling like the family we'd become. But then, the moment I was alone, my phone would buzz with a message from Luke. Just a few words, a little joke, a reminder that he was still there. It was like a switch, a trigger in my brain that would pull me away from the warmth of home and send me into the fog of guilt and excitement. I could see how much Noah needed Ben. The bond between them was growing stronger every day, and I couldn't deny how wonderful it was to watch. But I also started to notice something else. Ben was always busy with Noah, and I understood why, of course. Ben was trying to be the best father he could be, especially for a child who had been through so much. But it left me feeling forgotten in a way. I didn't fault him for it, not really. But there was a part of me that craved attention, affection. I didn't know how to ask for it. I didn't know how to communicate that I needed something more from him. And so I turned to Luke. It didn't start with intention. I wasn't trying to hurt Ben. I wasn't trying to ruin my life. But slowly, the relationship with Luke became more and more intense. The lines between right and wrong blurred, and I couldn't tell where my feelings for Ben ended and my feelings for Luke began. What was real? Was it the life I shared with Ben, full of stability and safety? Or was it this new life, with Luke, full of passion and excitement? And in all of that, I started feeling like I was losing myself. The guilt weighed on me every day. Every time I looked at Ben, I saw his love, his trust, and I knew I was betraying it. But at the same time, when I saw Luke, I felt free. I felt like I could be whoever I wanted to be. I could be someone more exciting, more alive, more daring. One night, I was alone at home with Ben and Noah. Ben had just put Noah to bed, and we were sitting on the couch, like we did every night. He was scrolling through his phone, and I was trying to focus on something on TV. But I couldn't. I kept thinking about Luke. I kept thinking about how I had kissed him last week, how he had held me, how it felt like the world had stopped in that moment. And then it happened. My phone buzzed, and I saw that it was Luke. I don't know what possessed me, but I excused myself and went to the bedroom to text him back. I told myself it was just a quick response, that it would be fine. But it wasn't fine. The moment I replied, I felt the tension in my chest, the realization that I was living in a lie. It wasn't long after that night that Ben started noticing something was off. He asked me if I was okay, if everything was fine between us. I didn't know how to answer him. I wanted to tell him everything. I wanted to confess and beg for forgiveness, but I couldn't. I couldn't bring myself to say the words. So, instead, I distanced myself. I withdrew. I started avoiding spending time alone with him, making excuses, staying out late with friends, or just hiding behind work. The more I pulled away, the more I felt like I was sinking into this pit of guilt and shame. And yet, the more I saw Luke, the more I got lost in that world of excitement and adrenaline. It wasn't just the physical attraction. It was more than that. Luke made me feel wanted, desirable in a way that I hadn't felt in so long. But I began to realize, too, that this wasn't a healthy way to live. It wasn't just about passion. It was about me running from something I wasn't willing to face. But the worst part, I knew deep down that Ben deserved better. He deserved someone who would be honest with him. He deserved someone who would put him and Noah first. I wasn't doing that. And every time I thought about how much Ben had sacrificed for me, for our family, it made the guilt worse. I kept telling myself I would stop, that I would end things with Luke and try to focus on Ben, on my family. But it was never that simple. Every time I tried, I found myself pulled back into that whirlwind, unable to break free. One evening, I finally decided to confront Ben about it. I don't know why I thought that would make me feel better. Maybe I was hoping he would be understanding, or maybe I just needed to get it off my chest. But when I sat him down, when I looked into his eyes and tried to explain, the words wouldn't come out. I couldn't say what I had done. I couldn't confess my betrayal. And even though I knew it was eating me up inside, I couldn't bring myself to shatter the fragile world we had built. So, instead I lied. I told him everything was fine, that I was just stressed out, that it was nothing. But it wasn't nothing, and deep down, I knew that this lie was going to catch up with me sooner or later. The day everything changed came quietly, almost innocently. I remember it so clearly because, in hindsight, it's almost as if I knew it was coming. It was a Saturday, the kind of day where the sun was shining just enough to make everything feel right. Ben and Noah were in the backyard, playing catch with a soccer ball, and I was inside, scrolling mindlessly through my phone. It wasn't like I was avoiding them, I just wasn't in the moment anymore. I was lost in my own head, in my own mess. I didn't hear Ben come in at first. I didn't hear the door open, or his footsteps on the hardwood floor. I was too wrapped up in my own world, the world I'd been hiding for months. I guess he didn't know what to expect when he came back inside. But I think the moment he found me like that, distracted, withdrawn, he started to piece it together. He walked into the living room, standing in the doorway for a second, watching me as I sat there, looking at my phone. He didn't say anything right away. He just stood there. But I could feel the shift in the air, that heavy silence that said everything wasn't okay. "Hey," he said softly, and I looked up, startled. "Hey," I responded, trying to sound casual, like everything was fine. But Ben wasn't buying it. He knew me better than anyone, and in that moment, I think he saw right through me. He took a few steps into the room and sat down beside me on the couch. I tried to look away, but my eyes wouldn't leave him. I could see it in his face. Something was different. Something was broken. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice almost too gentle. "You haven't seemed like yourself lately." The guilt hit me like a punch to the stomach. I couldn't lie anymore. Not to him. Not like this. But the words wouldn't come. I wanted to tell him everything, but I was terrified of how he would react. What if he left? What if he never forgave me? I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. I couldn't bear the thought of losing Noah. "I'm fine," I said, but even I could hear the strain in my voice. It sounded fake. I knew it, and I knew Ben did too. He leaned back, his hand running through his hair in that way he always did when he was frustrated or confused. He didn't press me, though. Not right away. Instead, he just sat there, waiting, like he was giving me the space to say what was on my mind. But the longer the silence stretched, the more I could feel the weight of my secret pressing down on me. It wasn't long before Noah came running inside, his face flushed with excitement. "Mom, Dad, look what I can do," he yelled, holding up a soccer ball in his hands. For a split second, the world felt normal again. For a split second, I felt the way I had before everything started falling apart. Ben's face lit up as he stood up to join Noah, the father-son bond so obvious in that moment. And in that instant, I realized how much I had taken for granted, how much I had risked. But that brief moment of normalcy didn't last long. As Ben and Noah went back outside, I sat there, staring at the spot where Ben had been, the empty space between us feeling heavier than ever. That evening after dinner, Ben was in the kitchen cleaning up, while I was in the living room with Noah. I had just finished reading him a bedtime story when Ben came in, holding his phone in his hand. He didn't say anything at first. He just handed it to me, his face unreadable. "I found something," he said, his voice low. I took the phone, my hands shaking as I unlocked it, only to find a string of messages between Luke and me. Texts I thought had been deleted long ago. Messages I had convinced myself were safe. I froze. My heart stopped. My breath caught in my throat. Ben didn't say anything else. He didn't yell. He didn't ask questions. but I could see it in his eyes. The hurt, the confusion, the disbelief. I never wanted this, I whispered, tears starting to form in my eyes. I never meant for this to happen. Ben didn't respond at first. He just stood there, looking at me, as if trying to understand what had led us here. And then, in a voice so calm it was almost terrifying, he asked, "Why?" I couldn't answer. How could I? How could I explain something that I couldn't even explain to myself? I didn't have the words. I didn't have an excuse. There was no justification for what I had done. I didn't want to hurt you. I choked out, my voice breaking. I didn't want to hurt us. Ben didn't say anything for a long time. He just stood there, the phone still in my hand, his eyes fixed on me like he was seeing me for the first time. "I need to think," he said finally, his voice quiet, distant. "I need some space." And just like that, everything between us changed. He turned around and walked out of the room, leaving me standing there, holding his phone, holding the remnants of our life together. It was in that moment that I realized how much damage I had done, how far gone we were. The weight of the truth hit me all at once, and for the first time, I was truly terrified of losing everything. Of losing Ben, of losing Noah, of losing the family I had built and taken for granted. The guilt felt suffocating. I knew there was no going back. It's hard to explain the silence that followed. I didn't hear from Ben for hours after he walked out. The house felt cold, empty, like I was living in someone else's life. I kept thinking he would come back, that he would say something to make it all right, but nothing happened. I was left alone with the weight of what I had done, and Noah, who had no idea what was going on, who just wanted his parents to be okay again. That night, I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Ben's face, the way he looked at me when he found out. His eyes weren't filled with anger, not at first. No, it was something worse. It was disappointment. The kind of disappointment that cuts deeper than anything else. I knew then that I had betrayed him in the worst possible way. I had broken his trust. The next morning, Ben was distant. Not angry, but quiet, like he was still processing everything, like he wasn't sure if he even wanted to talk to me. I could see the conflict in his eyes. He was trying to figure out what to do, and I was too afraid to ask. Noah was running around the house, as kids do, laughing, asking for pancakes, blissfully unaware of the storm that had hit. I tried to put on a smile, but it felt fake, like the walls of our house were closing in on me. Ben finally spoke to me after breakfast, his voice tight. "I don't know what to say. I don't know how we move past this." I nodded, knowing that no matter what I said, it wasn't going to fix anything. I was the one who had broken this, and now I had to face the consequences of my actions. He asked me to leave. I don't know if it was a temporary thing, or if he was trying to process everything alone, but he told me to take a few days. At that moment, I wanted to argue, to beg him to let me stay, to explain how sorry I was, how much I regretted what had happened, but I didn't. I just stood there, staring at him, knowing I had no right to ask for anything. So, I packed a bag. I drove to a friend's house, feeling like a stranger in my own skin. It felt like my world had fractured in ways I couldn't even begin to understand. And I hated myself for what I had done, for being so weak, so selfish, for allowing myself to get lost in something that was never going to be real. I stayed with my friend for the next couple of days. It was a blur of sleepless nights, endless self-loathing, and the occasional attempt to reach out to Ben, but he didn't respond. I knew I had broken something that might never be fixed. During those days, I thought a lot about what had happened. I thought about why I had cheated, why I had allowed myself to get so lost in the thrill of something forbidden. And the answer, while hard to admit, was simple. I was running. Running from a life that felt suffocating. Running from a marriage that wasn't broken, but wasn't whole either. I was running from the love Ben had given me, because I didn't know how to ask for more. Or maybe I was too afraid that there was no more to give. But cheating, betraying him, wasn't the answer. I knew that now. I called him after the second day. It was the hardest thing I've ever done. He answered, his voice so flat, so distant, that it nearly broke me. I told him I was sorry. I told him I was willing to do anything to fix this, to fix us. But he didn't say much. He just told me that he needed more time, that he couldn't process everything yet. I don't know if I can forgive you, but I need time to think, he said. That was it. No promises, no reassurance. Just the truth. And it hit me harder than anything. When I finally went home, it was like stepping into a different world. Ben and I were both walking on eggshells. Noah had no idea what was going on. He was his usual, energetic self, but I could see the tension in the air. I could feel it. It was like something had been shattered, and no matter how much we tried to glue it back together, it would never be the same. Ben and I talked a few times, but each conversation felt like we were strangers. There was no warmth, no connection, just two people trying to figure out how to move forward after something unthinkable had happened. The hardest part was watching Noah look at us both, confused, and wondering why things weren't the same. He was still too young to fully understand, but I could see the little questions in his eyes. I hated myself for putting him in this position, for tearing apart the foundation of what was supposed to be a stable home. Ben asked me once, quietly, almost as if he didn't want me to hear, "Do you still love me?" And that question almost destroyed me. How could I answer him? How could I tell him that yes, I still loved him, but that I had broken him, that I had shattered everything we had worked for? I didn't know if we would ever be able to move past this. The guilt was overwhelming, suffocating. I knew I had to earn his trust back, but I didn't know if it was even possible. As time passed, I tried to be patient, to show him that I was willing to do whatever it took to fix myself, to fix our marriage. But Ben was different now. He wasn't the man I had married. He wasn't the man I had fallen in love with. He was guarded, and I didn't blame him. He had every right to be. And so, we lived in this strange, fragile space for months. I tried my best to be there for Noah, to show Ben that I was committed to making things right. But I could see that Ben was no longer the person I had once known. The pain in his eyes was always there, and no matter how many times I said I was sorry, I knew it would never be enough. In the end, the truth was that our marriage was never the same after that. We tried, for Noah's sake, for a while. But the cracks were too deep. I had betrayed him in the worst way, and I knew I could never take that back. I don't know what the future holds for Ben and me, or for me and Luke, or for anyone. All I know is that I lost something precious, and I don't think I'll ever be able to get it back.